my very first trip I ever made, well, I was in South Florida. I had the RV, and I took a map of the United States, and I turned it, shut my eyes, and I turned it a couple times, and then I just put my finger down, and my finger landed on Maine, and I looked
Okay.
at Maine. I'm like, well, I've never been to Bar Harbor, so I went to Bar Harbor, Maine, my very first trip, and stayed for a month there.
Hello, I am John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people around the world that are watching us and saying, okay, we know Canada, we know British Columbia, where is Prince George? Well, it is about 500 miles north of Vancouver. That puts us in the center of British Columbia. Big province. Lots of trees, lots of nature. Around the 50 miles from here, there are probably 100 lakes. A beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place. Today, a very special day. We have a very, very special guest. Her name is Jenell Jones. And Jennell is a traveler big time. And she tells us all about it. And she is located today in Washington State, just close to Rainier Mountain, and she will tell us all about that as well. Janelle, welcome to my show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So tell us about you, Janelle. Where are you from originally? And I was nearly going to say, and where are you now? Well, you have been traveling a whole lot. You will tell us all about that. But first, give us a bit of background as to where you're originally from in the States.
Okay. All right. I was born and raised in Texas. I am the oldest of six kids. Lived in a trailer. We were fairly poor. We ate, but we were poor. There was like three or four of us to a bedroom each time. I moved 12 times in 12 years for schools. So from the very beginning of my life, I was instilled, or because of the family dynamics, it instilled in me this moving, this wanderlust, if you will, that I always needed to be moving and going to the next thing.
Did you like that?
At the time, no. I mean,
No.
it's hard for any kid to go from school to school to school, always being
That's
the
what I
new
would think,
person.
yeah.
It was. But looking back, it made me now so I can talk to anybody about anything. I can at least, say two or three sentences to get it started. I'm not afraid to walk up and say hello to people, even to this day. So it did instill in me a certain personality and outgoing, either that or I was going to be shy and not have any friends ever. And
Right.
so I don't remember making a conscious choice about that, but I wanted friends. So I just made myself talk and go out and be friendly.
And it gave you confidence?
I would, at the time, I didn't think so, but yes, looking back now and the crazy life that I've had and the leaps of faith I've taken on some crazy stuff, yes, it has given me confidence. I feel very confident in my abilities now.
Yeah, I like it when you say now, because for me, it took me a long, long time before I felt at peace with who I was and where I was going and what I was going to do. Now, the other thing that's unique about you, you are a traveler. You have decided your lifestyle, at least now, is to travel mainly around the United States from corner to corner, all over the place, and an RV. And what made you do that? And you have traveled already, I believe, close to 36,000 miles. That's a long, long way. And then you're never home other than the wheels that are under you is your home.
Well, yes. And actually, I've traveled about 50,000 miles in my RV. When I retired in 2015, I realized that I, like everyone there, I wanted to travel. So I had sold my house, so I packed two suitcases. One big suitcase for hot clothes, one big suitcase for cool clothes. And for 6 months, I took 20 grand, and for 6 months, I lived out of those. Just I had no home. I hiked the Amalfi Coast. I went to Champagne, France, and learned about champagne and drank champagne. I canoed the Lewis and Clark. Just had a great life, a great time. But
Right.
as the bank account dwindled, I realized I enjoyed traveling, but I missed my home. And so I figured I knew, and RVing was way in the back of my mind. But, I'm single and of a certain age, and not many women in their late 50s run off and buy an RV and start traveling. But
No.
I did. I did. And so now I'm always home. I'm always at my house. And people are like, aren't you homeless? Are you My mom asked me, "Are you
Right.
all right with your money?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm fine with my money. I'm choosing this lifestyle." Especially as I got older. I wasn't going to sit in my house and garden and sew, which is fine and I love both, but
Yeah.
I needed way more than that.
Right.
So that's what kind of made me realize I want to keep traveling, but I want my house with me.
So the RV that you have, is it fairly big or is it, so
Oh
is
yeah.
it, yeah?
Oh yeah, it's 36 feet long, and then with my car behind me, it's 60 feet long. I weigh about 30,000 pounds going down the highway, so I have to watch for bridges. I'm about
Right.
13 feet high, so I
Yeah.
have to watch, bridges that I go over. I never knew about bridges. You just go under them. Now I'm very aware of bridges.
Exactly. You don't want to get one that's too low. So
No.
how do you plan your trip or trips? Do you lay it out in advance?
I do. I picked somewhere I've always wanted to go, like Alaska, when I drove through Western Canada there, up through Victoria, British Columbia, and I went to Alaska. I just picked somewhere I wanted to go. My very first trip I ever made, well, I was in South Florida. I had the RV, and I took a map of the United States, and I turned it, shut my eyes, and I turned it a couple times, and then I just put my finger down and my finger landed on Maine. And I looked
Okay.
at Maine. I'm like, well, I've never been to Bar Harbor. So I went to Bar Harbor, Maine, my very first trip, and stayed for a month there.
How long ago was that?
That was in 2018.
2018. Yeah, so you've been doing this for nearly 5 years,
Yeah.
really, 6 years,
Yeah.
approaching
Yep.
6 years. So
Yeah. And
when did you go to Alaska?
I went to Alaska the next year in 2019. I
Okay.
drove from South Florida to Skagway, Alaska.
So you came through Vancouver
I did. I
and
did.
then you did a side trip to Victoria because you had to go over the ferry.
I did.
And Vancouver Island is beautiful. And then you came
Yes.
turned around. You went back to Vancouver or through Vancouver. You headed north, came through the Rocky Mountains in Canada, beautiful. And then you went through Williams Lake, Quesnel, and then Prince George. You came through. And then
Yes.
you went on from there towards the Dawson Creek, which is the
Right.
start of the Alaska Highway that
Yes.
took you all the way to the Yukon border. And the first town in the Yukon border was Watson Lake, and then, which is mile number 936 or something. And then you went to White Horse, and then from there and then to Alaska.
Yes. Wow, very
Long,
good. I didn't even remember all that, but yes, that's it.
because I lived in Watson Lake at one point for about 5 years, and then I've been in Prince George for about 60 years, and then we have a place in North Saanich, which is close to Victoria, and about 5 minutes from the ferry where you arrived. So it's yeah, and then I fly around a lot, and and I love flying. I'm also a private pilot, but also do a lot of commercial flying in North America, and do a lot of business actually in Texas and all throughout the United States. So, and every time when I do that, I sit close to the window, so I appreciate your feelings about the country, because every time I look out of the window, I say it's paradise. It is paradise. We're so fortunate in North America, both the United States and Canada, compared to some of the other challenging places around the world. We are very, very lucky.
I remember going through Canada and just being, once you get out of Victoria and all that and get kind of in the wilderness, if you will, just incredible. I mean, it just went one day after the next. I saw so many animals, I can't remember all of them. A moose went straight right in front of my RV and wouldn't move. And I just sat there and let him do his thing. But I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm on a highway with a moose that won't move.
and,
It was
and
a great experience.
And all those things happen. And here, sitting in central British Columbia, Prince George, and you came through here, less than 5 minutes away from where I'm sitting, is where the highways go north and south, which you would have taken Highway 97, or Highway 16 from west to east. And around here it is not uncommon to see black bears, see grizzly bears, moose, deer, caribou, you name it. We have it all here, and all within very close proximity to the city. And as I said earlier in my introduction, within 50 miles from around us, we'll probably have 100 lakes. It is paradise, no question about it.
I've also been to the Canadian Maritimes. I did that last summer, I think. Loved
Wow.
that. I didn't do Newfoundland, but I'll go back and do that. But I did all the other around, gosh, I can't remember all of it now, but I did all the Canadian
Yeah.
Maritimes, led a group of RVers, and we went through there. Just Canada's awesome. By the time I left the Canadian Maritimes, I was like looking at property to buy. I'm like, I'm moving to Canada,
Yeah, and Canada is a beautiful, beautiful country, and I love it. I was born in Holland, and
right?
November the 1st, 1940. So I'm going to be 84 this year, and I love it. Then the other part is that we were liberated by the Canadian Army during the Second World War, April the 12th, 1945, and it made such an impression on me when I was only 5 years old, 4.5, 5 years old, that I always knew I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada. And I wanted to go first when I was 17, and my parents wouldn't let me, and then I went when I was 23. And I wanted to start with nothing. Couldn't speak the language, didn't know a soul, and didn't have any family. And
No
I,
money.
yeah, I had the dream of building a lumber mill, and so I came to Vancouver, and I went to the immigration department, and I could speak English, but there was a German fellow, I could speak some German, and I said to him what I wanted to do. He said, "Go to Prince George. It's a boom town. That's where they're building all the mills and all of those things." So I arrived here in July of 1965. I had, with my suitcase, I had 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and I counted my money at least 3 times. I had exactly $25.47. But what I had lots of is attitude. I'm always an optimist. I avoid negative, passion. Whatever I do, I give it 120%. And work ethic, I work harder than anybody. Even now, I get up at 5:30 in the morning. I always make my bed, and I'm always think I'm late. And and you see, even now still, at nearly 84, I still work 12 to 14 hours a day, and I love it. I enjoy it, and I write books, have companies, do a lot of podcasting, do speaking circuit, and I was going to show you the last book that I wrote, and I said the price of this book is $25.47, but that's the point that in connecting it to the money that I had. You said to me, turn it around, and then Scott said, no, wait until you hear the podcast. Now we are there. So this is me. It's living young, dying old.
I love it. Great title. I love that.
Yes, and it's a picture of me. I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America. And
Really?
yes,
Still? Oh, very
still,
nice.
I'm training right now for the Arnold's when in 2025 when I'm 85, and so this is the way I look today, is like this, and I'm in the gym and working very very hard to compete at the Arnold's in 2025. I qualified for it just before COVID. Qualified bodybuilding physique in northern BC. That qualified me for the provincials. Qualified there. Came in third in physique, second in bodybuilding. That qualified me for the nationals and the Arnold's. But then COVID came, and so everybody kind of had to change what they were doing, and then after COVID, I started again training, and so now I'm still getting ready to go in 2025 to the Arnold's.
Do you ever wish you could find that guy at the immigration who told you, gave you advice to go there and say, look what that little offhanded comment has done for my life?
Can you imagine? And it is
I
so
know.
coincidental, as you well know already from some of the things that you said. It started all in Holland. The Second World War was very, very difficult, very hard on the families, and the Canadians liberating us. I knew from that time forward, as a 5-year-old, that I would go to the land of my heroes. Then the next thing was that I was not exactly very good student, and I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times. And then he said, okay, well, that's done with school now. So, and then my parents were beautiful people, but some people said, send him to the mentally challenged school. Fortunately, they didn't do that. They wouldn't do that. And they said, he should learn a trade. And so at 13, my dad was in lumber. My grandfather was a master carpenter. They said, how about making him a furniture maker? And so they sent me to the furniture factory, and that's where I started my career in the lumber industry, now nearly 70 years ago. And so, and then I kind of didn't feel good about myself. All the friends that I had all around me, the young people are hard on each other, right? So all of a sudden I became a laborer. I'm proud of that today, but then they kind of looked down on it, right? And so, but it didn't totally get me down, but I always knew I was going to go to Canada, and then I was going to build my own lumber mill to prove to me that I could do it. And if I did, which I then started going to Canada when I was 23, I was going to start with nothing. And so when I arrived in Prince George, as I said earlier, could speak language, didn't know a soul, and didn't only had $25.47, but still my dream. And it only took me a year, and I was already a superintendent of one of the larger lumber mills here. Within 2.5 years, I had a little mill, and I was managing and part owner of the mill. And you know where the mill was? Watson Lake, Yukon.
Okay.
I was there for 5 years. Now, you came through Watson Lake, I presume, during the summer, and
Yes.
I lived there for 5 years, coming from Holland. the coldest that I've seen there is 62 degrees below zero. And the winters, it would snow in July, and you didn't know if it was late or early.
Right.
And then the other part about Watson Lake is a very good Watson Lake, big lake, but it's the perfect place to learn to water ski because your toes go like this. If you fall off, it's going to kill you. So,
That's funny.
but it was a great experience. So I did build my mills, and now many years later, so I've been quite successful in business. But that's not what this is all about. And then kind of latter part in my life, I became an author, and obviously I've been very busy podcasting and speaking circuit and all of that kind of stuff.
Nice. That's a remarkable story, life story, and something that I think people need to hear, that it can happen. It's hard work, determination, some morals, and just keep moving forward.
Attitude, passion, work ethic. Now, the other part that I should share with you, Janelle, is that I didn't know, is I showed you my one book, and then, I was building all these mills and all that kind of stuff and all the business. Everybody said, you're so successful. You should write a book about it. Now, writing books is not easy. And I stopped and I started. And then about 5-6 years ago, I thought, if I don't do it now, it will never happen. So I wrote a book that is called Against All Odds. And it is not about how successful John is, but all the ups and downs along the way. And so that was my first book. And then the other part that I found out is that I went to a store here in Prince George, and it was in 1997. I was already here for 32 years. And I picked up a book, and the title of the book was Driven to Distraction. And I don't know why I picked it up. I don't know why I looked at it. It was written by Dr. Halliwell, and it was all about ADHD. And I said, oh my God, that's me. And so I wrote in the book in Dutch, because I was ashamed of it, stigma attached to it. Now I finally know who I am. And it took me a long time, a number of years actually, before I even went to my personal doc, who was delivered our 2 daughters and at the same time was a personal friend. And he said, hey John, why are you here? I said, I think I got ADHD. And so we checked out, yeah, I do. I wrote a book about that, and that is this one here, ADHD Unlocked. And, so after I kind of checked out, but it was all Dr. Halliwell, has written 18 books, 5 on distraction. He's probably globally one of the best known. He's a doctorate, and best known individuals, especially as it relates to ADHD, and an amazing individual, and being very active in it. Now you are my podcast number 281. I was able to bring Dr. Halliwell, that wrote the book Driven to Distraction, in 1993. I bought it in 1997, and I had him on my podcast about 6 months ago. He changed my life. He did.
Yeah.
And so now the interesting part about it is that ADHD frequency of occurrence, I thought it was relatively low initially, but then I believed, and I mentioned that to Dr. Halliwell actually, that it was at least 20%. He said, no, John, it's probably more than 25%. And I agree with him. And then the other part about ADHD is that among successful entrepreneurs or CEOs, I believe that at least 50% of them, successful ones, that is, are ADHD. He said, no, John, probably
Really?
75% of them. And I agree with that. So,
Oh,
and so if you look back at what you were saying earlier, that one person, if you could find that one person, that German fella in Vancouver at the immigration department that said to me, John, go to Prince George, that's where the opportunities are, I would have to go and thank him for telling
yeah.
me. But all along the way, if I think about the Canadian Army that liberated us and made me come to Prince George or to Canada, the other one would be the dream of starting my own lumber mill, and the other one would be Dr. Halliwell, and driven to distraction that changed my life. And then a number of other factors that, knowing that I'm a good writer, even considering that I grew up in Holland, different language, speaking dialect really. I had to first acquired speaking High Dutch, which was not an easy challenge. And then I barely got that under control. I come to Canada, now I have to learn to speak English. And then have to learn to write in English and do all the books about it. But all circumstances that have an effect on your life, obviously. And
Sure.
so the same with you, that decided at some point in life that you would go traveling. You sell the house and then buy your RV and start traveling around not only the United States but also Canada. How about Mexico?
John, I'm going to Mexico in November.
Okay,
So I will knock that off the list too. I think you're a great testament to the fact that the challenges that a person faces, even severe. I mean, no language, no, you didn't even do well in school, and the language and no money. That it can be done. I mean, you're a great testament to that. My God, you're a prolific writer, and you had to repeat third and seventh grade, I think you said.
three
So
times.
that's a great testimony.
Yeah, and so and I feel that as well, and so the ADHD has had an effect on my life. I call it a superpower. There's still stigma attached. That's why I have an obligation to speak about it and write about it. And I do that frequently, hence, not on all my podcasts, but if the topic comes up or the opportunity comes up, I speak about it. And then the other part is that I've had an amazing amount of experience in my life, which has made me successful. Obviously I was affected by ADHD. Some people said to me, "Hey, John, does it still bother you that you failed grade 7 3 times and you left school at the age of 13?" I said, "It really does. It still bothers me very, very much. I should have left earlier."
I was not expecting that.
Yes, and I mean it actually in a little bit tongue in cheeks, but what I said is that after that, I started focusing on the things that I wanted to do. I wanted to learn about what made people successful. I would, even in Holland, travel far and wide to listen to people making presentations that, in my mind, had been successful. What made them click? And I found there were consistencies always. And I kept doing the same, that if you would ask me, "Hey, John, what were the 3 books that you took with you from Holland?" Well, the one was Management by Drucker, very popular book in North America on management styles, but in Dutch. And then the other one was Logical Thinking and in Dutch. And then the other one was all about Canada. And so even then already, even when I first started here, being a cleanup man, and then all the other things. I would always look for people that were successful, and I started looking at that all the time. So and then I was always had an interest in all those topics surrounding business, but also becoming very involved in community and being very proactive. But as I said earlier to you, that when I suggested that becoming confident in who you are took me a long time, because it was not until 1997, and I found a book of Dr. Halliwell, that I said, ADHD, that's me. There is no question about it. The more I learned about it, the more I know that the frequency of occurrence very high, both among male and female, different but similar, and that it has the potential of being a superpower, and so that's what has made me successful, and focusing on areas that I'm really interested in business, but also in terms of being an author, obviously a public speaker, and then doing a lot of podcasting and really enjoying it.
Yeah. I'm so glad to be able to talk to you today, because I relate to a lot of what you're saying. A scrap hard upbringing, and then kind of going in different directions, and realizing that you do have this superpower. And I love hearing that. It's a great testimony. I know I keep saying that, but I just love hearing your story. I looked you up a little bit and listened to some of the other podcasts, of course, before I came on today, but I didn't realize the extent of who you are. You took that ADHD and made it into a superpower. And a lot of kids have that nowadays. And so if they could reframe it to that and help them manage it, my gosh, they could take on the world.
Exactly. And that's why it is so important for me to speak about it. I do a lot of presentations to younger people, not only on that topic, but it does come up about it. And then I'm very involved in communities and in the schooling system, that I believe that they have not been as proactive as they can be, in our learning models that we use, and to pay more attention to people that have, even with this book, Jennell, I look at it, this is not only for people that are that are benefiting from ADHD. I do not look at it as a distraction, but also people that have been affected by trauma. This book is very, very much a book for them to understand, because the effect of trauma in a lot of cases is that traditional learning doesn't work for a lot of people that have been affected by trauma. And then the frequency of occurrence is so high that I'm also suggesting that for most people, you cannot avoid being touched by ADHD. It's either in your family, either in your friends, or the workplace. It's so frequent in the world that it is important for those people to read not only my book, but other books about the subject, is that because people with ADHD tend to be a little different, not in the bad way, but they're a little bit different in different ways. And I found that even when I'm involved in management and in boards, and I'm very involved in all kinds of other structures that, where I'm in, and sitting in boards and interacting with CEOs of companies and entrepreneurs, is that a lot of people that have gone through the traditional learning, and I'm not against that, have acquired the skill sets to work within a box that is called management. And what I do usually is saying, I go outside of the box and say, why are we not doing this? how about this or how, and that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, but I love it because that's, I believe, gave me the benefit. The other part is that obviously with ADHD, I'm a very good writer, and I know that. I'm a very good speaker. I know that as well because I have a good memory, amazingly good memory, even at 84, nearly 84. And then, the it took a while for my getting that confidence, and so what I, especially when I'm interacting with young people, is I say to them that it's so critically important that everybody is so concerned about the way they look and the way their clothes is and all the. I say, believe this: you are special. There's only one of you in this whole world, and that makes you unique. Believe that, and be you, and have that confidence that there's only one of you on this earth. And that's very, very important. Do not be preoccupied about this is not right and that's not right and I don't do, all those kind of things are not important.
And it's too bad the kids don't know that. They don't see it.
No.
My grandson has ADHD. And so I'm going to suggest to my daughter that she get your book. I'd like to read it myself because you're right. We're all affected by it. His is managed and under control and all that. But, he still has it and he knows he has it and he knows he takes medicine. But of his 6 little friends he hangs around with, 3 of them, him and 2 others, have ADHD.
Yeah. And, and frequency of occurrence much higher than most people had thought it would be. And I say, and I'm the example of it, that I've gone through it all. And what is the unfortunate part of it, Janelle, is that I was 13 when I failed grade 7 for the 3rd time, and they said, okay, well, this is enough of that. So get them a set of coveralls and send them to a factory. And my parents were good, but with the set of coveralls, I was small for my age. On a Sunday, the school came out on Friday, I failed again. All the other kids were getting a month of holiday then in Holland. Here they get 2 months, but for me it was no holidays. On Sunday we went to a friend of my dad who had a clothing store, and we had to find 3 sets of coveralls. But they didn't have them small enough for me, so I had them all rolled up, and the crotch was hanging by my knees. That was not modern then; it is now. But so I want to, and so. But the point that I was making, I read the book of Dr. Halliwell at 1997, and so it took me another 5 years, and I was 57 years old. It took me another 5 years before I went to my doc, as I said earlier, and so then I was nearly 62. It was nearly 50 years for me to figure out that that was it. And it was with me all that time that I was wondering, what is different? Why is there something different about me? It did not stop me from building companies, and I have a number of companies now, but I always knew there was something that was different. And it was not until then that I then realized that's what it is. And then it didn't take me long to Google it and finding out, and then I knew it was a superpower. And from that point forward, I started writing books, becoming much more active in terms of public speaking, became very active in obviously podcasting, and even now still I'm working on 2 other books. One will come out next April and another one in August. And so the point that I make to young people, if I can do it, growing up in Holland during the worst period of the war, being affected by PTSD, still with me today, and the inner child, getting counseling for that, in my 50th year, very emotional, and all the things, and starting with nothing, and all the things, if I can do it, anybody can do it. It is
Absolutely.
just, everything is possible.
It's so true, isn't it? It's so true. And because of work like Dr. Hollowell and now yourself, ADHD is not the stigma, at least in the young kids, not the stigma it was. For instance, my grandson, the teachers know that when he does a test, he needs to stand up. That's it. That's a simple little thing. And there's three or four of the kids in the class that need to stand up, that he needs to be able to fidget and stand up. And he does his test and he does fine. But before he had the diagnosis and was made to sit in that desk and not move and not talk, he was just this terrible kid because he couldn't be still and he talked to his neighbors. He got up and left the classroom, and he's a very bright child. He just needed some accommodation. It's not nowhere near the stigma. And I hope no other little boy has to wait till they're 62 to go to their doctor and get diagnosed.
The other thing that you may want to suggest respectfully is that my podcast with Dr. Halliwell is podcast
Mm-hmm.
number 203. And,
Okay.
so I did that probably about 6, 8 months ago or so, and was amazing because Dr. Halliwell is recognized as one of the major knowledgeable individuals on the topic, and he is ADHD, but not only ADHD, he's also dyslexic, and
Oh,
so am I actually, and but I haven't. I'm very good with numbers, and I'm very have a very good memory. And then the other part about it is that with my book, I'm going to send. They just came out yesterday, and this one, and I'm sending copies of it to CNN and some of the other people that keep talking about. I don't want to get involved in the politics and the United States, but at the same time, I know there's two individuals running. The one is 81 and the other one is 79, and they're saying the one is too old. And am I missing something here? I thought they're both about the same age. So that, in my mind, that is then no more topic. Then what are the other topics? So, but they every time I hear, including my friend Anderson Cooper, I want to get on his show, but he's not invited me yet. I'll send him my book, maybe he will, and say I gladly, as somebody that's 84 years old, argue with you about any point that you want to make, and see if I still have my marbles, or should I go to the old man's home or whatever, right? So age is just a number. It is it's quality of life that is important, and staying active and believing in doing all the things that get enough sleep, get what's out for your diet, get exercise. You don't have to become an Olympian or a bodybuilder like me, but I like it. But at
mm-hmm.
least the act, and even to me, the advantage I have over other people is experience, and that goes all the way back to what you were saying at the beginning of being in the mobile homes and going to 12 different locations, and you didn't like it much at the time, but it gave you a foundation that is still very much you today. And for me, the same is that the warriors and going through all of this and discovering ADHD and all the challenges along the way, I'm thankful to have it because it gives me an advantage over many others that they could not possibly duplicate. And no matter how long I would have gone to the school, I was not there mentally. And because they didn't know how to deal with that. I was just sitting, the guy that is doing it and is not paying attention. And so that was looked at as a problem. So for me, it was fortunate that I left school at 13 and then went the other direction.
I wonder if you had been was diagnosed and dealt with early in your life, if you would have been as successful if you are. I mean, I
Makes you
like to
wonder,
think you'd
doesn't
have
it,
been,
eh?
yeah, even more successful.
Yeah.
But as you said earlier, 75% of entrepreneurs are probably ADHD or could be up to that much. That's very common denominator there.
It's no question.
Yeah.
So that is it certainly is not a liability.
No.
It could potentially be a superpower, and I strongly believe that because, and most of the things that I do, obviously, I'm successful in business, and then I'm successful at a later stage in my life, well into my 70s, when I became an author. I'm successful there, and then I'm a successful podcaster. I love podcasting because a challenge. You never know what, and you do a lot of podcasting. So do I, and I love it because it is still on its infancy, and there you sitting at the base of Mount Rainier, and I'm sitting north of you by about 700-800 miles. But you could well be in Australia or China or wherever, because I podcast as you do, I'm sure, people from around the world, and every podcast is different, and I love it doing it. Like in our case, I'm podcasting you today. We will release it tomorrow. We release it very, very quick. I've been also on podcast by where I'm a host or a guest on a podcast, and so they say, I say, well, when do you release it? They said October. October? So, but I virtually like to do it live, and so we do it very, very quickly. But the point that I was going to make, Janelle, is that it is taking over socializing, interacting with people in the media. Podcasting extremely powerful, and it will expand much faster and further, more so than the newspapers and the news medias. Podcasting is the vehicle.
I think so too. I think it's like how radio was, and then it just got bigger and bigger and developed into TV and all that. I think podcasting is the future myself. It's so nice to be invited into like a living room. You're sitting on a couch. I could be sitting on the couch next to you.
Yeah,
And that is a great benefit worldwide, I think.
exactly. And then the other part about it, Chanel, is that while we are sitting here exploring each other's lives and talking about other things around us, and then we know that while you and me are interacting, like it is just like you sitting on the couch here next to me, we know that tens of thousands of people will be watching us. And that is very powerful.
I agree. It's the new form of TV. I mean, TV is who watches TV anymore, really?
Yeah,
I mean,
really. Yeah, I like that.
yeah.
So, Janelle, as you go forward, so you got more traveling to do. You're gonna in November go to Mexico, and then are you gonna go beyond that, or the base is always the United States, I presume?
hmm Yes, I bought a business last year to lead other RVers throughout the country.
Okay.
And so right now I'm leading a group that we started in Texas, believe it or not, all the way up through the United States and are making our way, Washington and Oregon for the summer. And then we're going to drive down California coast, end up in Mexico, and then come back. And then I'm going to come back for a couple of months and go to Baja, Cabo in February. So what a lot of people live in RVs, but they don't necessarily travel as much as I do. I move about once a week, about every 7 to 10 days. I move.
Yeah. So are there more and more people doing that than there were before? And is that usually people that have retired from, or is it mainly people that have retired from their normal jobs?
Yes and no. The
Yeah.
highest growing age is 55 to 75, but right behind it, right on its heels, is the 25 to 45-year-old. That's that van life. They're, working on the road. They're catching up with the older people that are traditionally associated with RVing. Going back to World War II for a second, RVing became popular and a viable living option after World War II. We think it's the housing boom or advertising, whatever. It was after World War II because of housing shortages and all.
Right.
They needed places. So that's when it became popular.
So we pretty much we covered a lot of areas, Janelle, and again, you were very, very special, very, very unique, amazing discussion that we had. If you send us some information, I'm going to send you the Against All Odds book and a couple of copies of the ADHD book, and I'll sign them for your son and a couple of other people.
Thank you. That would be very kind. Thank you very much. Yes.
I'll make sure that Scott gets your address. He probably has it, and then we'll do that. Again, it was a privilege, and I really enjoyed you being a guest on my podcast, Janelle, and I wish you good travel. Let's make sure we stay in touch.
Thank you, John. Thank you. I leave this podcast inspired. I really do. Thank you.
Me too.